High above the smog-choked skyline of the city, in a loft that smelled of linseed oil and loneliness, lived Silas. He was an artist, but not the kind who added beauty to the world. Silas was a subtractor. His studio was a graveyard of things that no longer existed. Empty cages where birds once sang, bare pedestals where vases once stood. The walls were lined with canvases, each one trapping a stolen piece of reality. You see, Silas had a curse. The moment his brush completed a subject, the real object would dissolve into mist, leaving only the image behind. He was the world's most efficient cleaner, and its most terrified hoarder. He lived in fear of accidentally painting something he loved, so he loved nothing. He kept his windows draped in heavy velvet, afraid that if he sketched the sun, the world would freeze. He was a prisoner of his own talent, destined to live in a room that grew emptier with every stroke of his brush. It started with a stray dog, a mangy, aggressive thing that had cornered him in an alley. Terrified, Silas had run home and furiously sketched the beast, capturing its snarling teeth and matted fur. When he put the pencil down, the barking outside ceased instantly. He went to the window. The alley was empty. Over the years, Silas tested his power. He painted the leaking pipe in his kitchen. It vanished, leaving a dry hole. He painted the pile of unpaid bills. They dissolved into ash. He realized he could edit reality. He began to see himself not as cursed, but as a surgeon removing tumors from the city. He walked the streets at night, sketching trash heaps, broken streetlights, and rusted cars. By morning, the streets were clean, and his studio was filled with paintings of debris. But editing the world was lonely work. To erase the bad, he had to isolate himself from the good. One slip of the hand, one absent-minded sketch of a smiling child, and he would be a murderer. So he stopped looking at people. He looked only at the things the world wanted to lose. Then came Elara. She wasn't something to be erased. She was the first thing Silas desperately wanted to keep. He met her at a pharmacy, her laugh cutting through the gray noise of his life like a splash of yellow paint. She was beautiful, vibrant, and persistently kind. She saw the paint on his hands and asked to see his art. For the first time, Silas lied. He told her he was a landscape painter who only worked from imagination. They began to meet. For Silas, every moment with her was a tightrope walk. He memorized her face, the curve of her jaw, the light in her eyes, but he forbade his hands from ever drawing her. He locked his studio. He bought a camera, the only safe way to capture her. Elara brought color into his monochrome world. She didn't know why he flinched when she stood too close to his easel, or why he refused to even doodle on a napkin at dinner. She just thought he was eccentric. She didn't know she was dating a man who held the power of Oblivion in his fingertips. The yellow coat faded. 6 months later, Elara wasn't laughing anymore. The diagnosis was cruel and swift, a rare degenerative condition that attacked the nerves. There was no cure, only a slow, agonizing descent. Silas watched as the woman he loved withered. The vibrant colors of her personality were bleached out by white hospital sheets and the pale blue of veins. Her pain was constant. It twisted her beautiful face into a mask of agony. Silas sat by her bedside, helpless. He could erase a leaking pipe, he could erase a pile of trash, but he couldn't erase a disease without erasing the host. He tried painting the microscopic virus, visualizing it from medical books, but it didn't work. The curse was literal. He had to see the subject to remove it. And he couldn't see the sickness inside her. He could only see her. Elara begged for relief. "Make it stop, Silas," she would whisper in the dark. "I don't want to disappear slowly. I want to be free." The idea formed in his mind like a black mold. It was a thought so horrific he vomited when it first struck him. But as Elara's screams of pain filled their apartment, the thought returned, sharper and more logical. He could end it. Not with medicine, not with death, which is messy and painful, but with art. He could transfer her. He could take her out of this world of agony and trap her in a moment of eternal peace on canvas. She would cease to exist in reality, but she would live forever in oil and pigment, smiling, healthy, safe. He brought her home for the last time. He set up his easel at the foot of her bed. He mixed his paints, his tears falling into the turpentine. "I'm going to paint you now, Elara," he said, his voice broken. She looked at him, and through the haze of pain she seemed to understand. She nodded weakly. She didn't ask what would happen. She trusted the artist. He painted for hours. It was the masterpiece of his life. With every stroke he memorized her. He painted the curve of her lip, and her breathing slowed. He painted the flush of her cheek, and her groans of pain ceased. As the portrait became more real, the woman in the bed became less so. She was fading, turning into a transparency, a ghost made of light. The heavy smell of sickness was replaced by the smell of fresh lavender paint. Silas sobbed as he worked, painting through a waterfall of grief. He wanted to stop, to throw the brush away and hold her, but he knew he couldn't leave a half-finished job. A half-erased wife would be a horror beyond imagination. He had to finish. He reached the final detail, the light in her eyes. He looked at the bed. Elara was barely a shimmer now, a heat haze in the shape of a woman. She smiled at him, a painless, weightless smile. "I love you," she mouthed, though no sound came. Silas touched the canvas with his finest brush. "Goodbye, my love." The sun rose over a quiet studio. There was no wheelchair. There were no medicine bottles. The bed was made, crisp and empty. In the center of the room stood the painting. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever seen. Elara looked alive, frozen in a moment of perfect joy, free from pain, free from the world that had hurt her. Silas sat on the floor in front of it, covered in dried paint, staring at her. He had saved her. He had cured her by removing her from existence. No one else remembered her. To the world, Silas had always lived alone. There were no records of her, no photos. Those had vanished the moment the painting was finished. She existed only in his memory and on that canvas. Silas reached out and touched the painted cheek. It was cold, textured canvas, but he imagined he felt warmth. He picked up his brush again. He looked at the empty room, then at himself in the mirror. He realized there was one last thing that needed to be erased to make the composition complete. He raised the brush to his own reflection.